Hey, all you Arizona lovers. This is the Finding Arizona podcast, episode number 356. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful weekend. We just want to say thank you to everyone who's been a part of this couple of episodes that we're putting out here. Also, those who are joining us on the YouTube channel, thank you so much for making this possible. It's incredible to see the support that we have here in our little community. And we're going to keep going. We're going to keep continuing this forward. So today's episode is with Mark Taylor Investments, and it is with John, who is their CEO. It was incredible to talk to John. John was someone who I really encourage you guys to go check out his details. He is someone of a master of success, and I would love to say that his really great points were culture and how to support those that are working for him, and really just bringing that forward. I love to say that this conversation really made a big difference in understanding where Mark Taylor is coming from and what they bring to the table. So I encourage you guys to go always to check out their links that we always provide in the bio below. I also want you guys to go check out our website, www.findingarizonapodcast.com. We make it easy for you guys to connect with us. Everything is under Finding Arizona Podcast, social media wise. And if you want to go check out the website, it has a chance for you to join our newsletter, also to check out all the things that go along with each episode. But on top of that, if you would like to actually start your own podcast, you have a chance to work with us to do so. So send us a line at findingarizonapodcast@gmail.com. We will make sure to get back with you with all the details of how we can support you in creating your dreams and making your own podcast. So that being said, this is episode number 356. I will catch you on the next one. As always, kisses, hugs, and belly rubs. Peace out. And welcome back, everybody, to the Finding Arizona podcast. I'm your host, Jose. As always, we bring in fantastic guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'd love to do a little intro here for John, just because I have it written down and I have it in my head so far. So let me go ahead and introduce John here. He is the president of Mark Taylor Investment Management and is responsible for strategy operations and new business development and property portfolio performance. And his portfolio is at $4 billion of multifamily real estate and investments under Mark Taylor Management. His diverse real estate and multifamily background includes on-site property management, financial management, and operational oversight. So please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome John from Mark Taylor. Thank you, John.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. I also have some notes here about you. So I already know, I feel like I know you a little bit, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you. But before we just get started, can you give us a little bit of your origin story? I know that you're a Minnesota boy. How'd you end up in Arizona?
Yeah, I grew up in southern Minnesota, very blue collar, poor upbringing. My mom had me when she was 17 with high school sweetheart. That story.
Yeah.
They subsequently got married at 18 and then divorced at 19. So my mom was on her own. My grandparents, her parents, were gracious enough to allow us to stay with them. They had a 1-bedroom small apartment in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. So we slept on the floor in sleeping bags for several years, and that was okay.
Wow.
I was well fed. I was taken care of. I had a great life. My mom remarried when I was 9. So we actually uprooted, moved to an even smaller town.
Wow.
Called Amboy, Minnesota, 606 people, big metropolis, big farming community. And my stepfather was a serial entrepreneur, which I think, influenced me from a work ethic perspective. Yeah. I was a full-time student farmer from age 10 to 18. And I think when I speak to young people today, I'll always say or refer to the fact that you should always find out what you don't want to do. And I certainly did not want to be the Mike Rowe dirty jobs farmer guy. I was that guy. I was Mike Rowe. So at age 16, with little strategy, I was really good at math. And I said, I want to be an electrical engineer. And I thought that would be a pathway for success for me.
Yeah.
And went to school. I was on the 5-year plan, went to technical school. I was doing online, Concordia College, Minnesota State College, and working with a small company called VTech, which was a semiconductor pick and place packaging company, mostly for cell phones, semiconductors, wafers. And the cool thing about that experience, I was able to travel the world. Nice. And I was in South Africa, China, South America, Canada, all over the United States, and Phoenix. And what I realized was I didn't want to live in Minnesota long term either. So at age 24, my girlfriend, Megan, at the time, she had also just lived in South Dakota, Minnesota her entire life. We said, hey, let's pack up and move somewhere for at least a year. Let's try something new. So I circled Phoenix and we debated. And I said, hey, Phoenix is my place. And she said, okay, she acquiesced. So we came down in August of 2001, toured probably 13 to 15 different apartment communities.
Okay.
The very last community I toured was a Mark Taylor community, unbeknownst to me, called San Cervantes. It was under construction, but open. So amenity spaces were open, a couple of residential buildings, and it was just past closing. So we did a self-guided tour. And what I always say to my internal team is I broke into a Mark Taylor. The first time I set foot on it, I snuck through the amenity areas. And what was really cool, Jose, is when I walked around the amenity building, and if you're familiar with the Mark Taylor architecture, I walked around the corner and the pool was so beautiful, it almost took my breath away. And, coming from a duplex in Mankato, Minnesota, that I was used to, shitty duplex, whatever. And I walked around the corner and I saw these water features, sand beach pool. There was music playing on the speakers. There was big ramadas with TVs and people were out having a great time. I'm like, I want to be part of that. How do I get that? So we flew back that night. I landed, couldn't sleep that night, got home, called the previous manager, Michelle Sinclair, who I'm still good friends with, just said, hey, how do I get a 2-bedroom? She's like, it's $940 and you get a month free. I'm like, I'm in, sign me up. So 3 weeks later, we took our U-Haul and drove down and I moved into San Cervantes.
I love it.
Then, of course, 9/11 happened, 9/11, 2001. And I was scheduled to fly back to Chicago for a final interview with a fuse company that was expanding to Phoenix. They're going to open a satellite office. Of course, there's no flights that day. That engineering business went south. So I was actively sending out resumes within the leasing office after we moved in. And I really got to know the community and the staff and the team with Mark Taylor. And a few months later, Michelle, who I mentioned, offered me a part-time leasing position. In my fixed mindset at the time, I'm like pounding my chest without much humility, saying, no, I'm an engineer. I can't do this real estate thing, right? And about a week later, I came to my senses, got to pay bills, right? All of those things. And I also thought it was an opportunity to learn real estate, which I was always a bit fascinated with, but didn't really know how to get involved in real estate. So I took the job and absolutely just fell in love with the organization. The team members were fantastic. I started to really understand Mark Taylor and the culture and just threw myself 110% into Mark Taylor and real estate. And about 6 months later, I got a call from a local electronics company. They said, hey, would you like to come and interview? We got your resume. And I thought about it for about a millisecond. My instinct said, no, I got to see what this pathway looks like. I can always go back to engineering. And 21 years later, I'm sitting here talking to you.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I want to just say, it's like, I knew a little bit of what your story was and just understanding like researching you and just kind of getting your story down. And I was like, wow, what a funny happenstance of sort of situations to happen to you. I mean, granted, there is a little bit of, unstableness from the 9/11 stuff, but it's like to go in part-time, or like I heard it was part-time at first, and then it moved into, and then, just to have it happenstance of like, I have an interest in this thing and maybe I can get some more out of it. And then it goes in from being part-time to, you're falling in love with it. And then it's just taking over your life to the point where it's like, okay, I don't even I can go back to this other thing. And it's not a worry. I just really am interested in and invested here. And so to me, that's so beautiful. Like that's so encouraging too, because I kind of started this podcast the same way. I just, was doing actually t-shirt printing. I was doing printing for customers and getting to know them a little bit better. Just was kind of what happens when you talk to them about their business, and then it kind of spiraled into this. And so for me, it's just really encouraging to know that there's other people with similar stories of like, it just kind of happened. It just kind of, fell into my lap. The other thing I would like to also state is just like, who you are from your personal standpoint and your personality. The one thing that you brought up was your kind of, upbringing and just your mindset of, you grew up sleeping on a floor.
And the one thing I want to tell everyone else in this podcast is that you went from starting out as a part-timer and you worked your way all the way up to president. Like you worked every job. I took a look at your LinkedIn and I was like, he's been at every level,
every job. That's right.
Every job in here. And so he understands Mark Taylor through and through, like what it needs, what every level is in need of, or he's been there. So to me, it's like you've seen it all on every level. Do you feel the same way as far as your mindset about your position now? Is that you have still kind of that I have been in every position, I kind of can feel it out, or I can kind of understand where everyone is at their level? Is that how you kind of approach things, or is there a different mindset that you go about in your CEO position?
Well, your question sparked some internal thought in the moment. And when I think about being in this role today, I sit down with every new hire group. So we have new hire groups every Monday. So just say 5 to 15 people, all levels of the organization. And I really think it's important that, and this is part of our growth as an organization. And really 2 years ago, we said we need to really break down our entire onboarding process, because I wanted to ensure that everyone really understood the culture of Mark Taylor, the vision, the mission, and why, right? What are we doing? And I think it's really important for everyone to know why we're doing this, where we're going, and why. And sitting down with those groups for 45 minutes to an hour, depending on Q&A, is fascinating. And when I think about sitting across from those 10 to 15 individuals, as Jordan Peterson would say, somebody I follow closely, never underestimate what you're going to learn from someone. Don't size someone up and just say, oh, I'll be dismissive. They don't look like I can learn something from them. Maybe it's a 19-year-old kid who's just starting as a service technician. No, I can learn from him. I don't know what his story is or what he's overcome. I want to learn. So I think, for me in that moment, I want to make sure that they know that, I'm going to always be a student of the market. That's from a, perspective of multifamily investment operations, all of those things, capital markets, because I think you have to be that way to be successful long-term. I think once you get labeled an expert or a master in something, it's easy to remove the humility and say, no, I know all. And I feel like I've never been in a position where I'm more of a growth mindset type guy. And I really feel like that's happened over the last 10 years for me. So when I think about what you're asking me as president, I think there's two challenges. One, it's ensuring that our strategy today makes us successful long-term. We think about this from, you've heard of Simon Sinek, so the infinite game, infinite journey. That's our organization. And that's how I want us to think. We've been in business 38 years. Jeff, Mark, Scott Taylor, the founders, started Mark Taylor in 1985. Scott would do the financing and the numbers and the management. Jeff would do the build side. And 38 years later, here we are. And they started just to feed their families, right? And it's evolved to this. So it's my responsibility to ensure that we're in business in perpetuity, 40, 50, 60 years. And I have to treat the organization as such. You think about great organizations like IBM, 100 years in business, that's really, really hard to do. So I think that's a piece of what my role is today. But my other piece, and it's really near and dear to me, is our culture and ensuring that all of those individuals sitting across from me every Monday have the same opportunity as me. And they have the same capable journey. And if I go back, if you'll let me, go back to 2002, my girlfriend left about a year after we moved here. I had no friends or family here, so I was the trailblazer. I know she left because of me, not because of the weather. So I take accountability for that, take extreme ownership, right, Jose? It was all me.
I love that. It's a beautiful statement. It's like, I take full responsibility. It wasn't the weather, it wasn't anything. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, she was a great girl. But so, in that moment, I had two choices. I could run back home where I had all of my family and friends. That would be the easy button. Click that. But I knew there was something more here for me. And I think what helped me get through that phase was Mark Taylor and the people. And I know that to be true because it became my connection to Arizona. So Mark Taylor's always been very familial. And, my friends, my coworkers helped me really, connect to the state. And what I want for these new employees is allow them in the first 90 days, I want you to connect to the organization. So I'll challenge them. I'll say, hey, what's your personal mission statement? Almost no one raises their hand, and that's okay. When they do, it's great because I love to hear what they're thinking about. Cause it's, someone that's either 18 to 70 that could, different levels, but saying, yeah, I have my mission statement. And I said, well, if you do, really try to understand what that looks like and how you can connect that to Mark Taylor's. Our mission statement is to create exceptional communities that invite, inspire, and feel like home. We're creating homes for people. We're not rocket scientists or doctors, but we are creating a very personal connection with folks because it is their home.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for me, I just want to make sure that they understand my job is really, I'm working for them. I want to support them in their journey. And if I do that the right way, and I always say this in new hire, I'll say, if you're here for 20 years, say the 10 people in the room, I'd say, if you're with Mark Taylor for 20 years and you leave on day one of your 21, because you're going to go be CEO of something, Pepsi, Tesla, whatever it is, the journey's large and big. I'm thinking grand. And you do an interview with Jose, you do a podcast, and all 10 sit across from you and you say, hey, tell me what it was like at Mark Taylor. And they say, they cared for me like a family member. They supported me. They were engaging. They gave me the tools to be successful from a operational real estate perspective. Yeah. I am more capable today as a leader and skilled than ever before. And if anyone wants to think about multifamily or real estate, go work for Mark Taylor.
I love that.
That's what I want, right? I want them to love the organization as much as I do. So I'll share my mission statement with you. It's to really, it's about empowering, supporting, and unifying our culture so that as a people, one day, all of them will love the organization as much as I do.
Love it.
That's my mission. And it evolves over time. Everyone's does. Yeah. But that's where I am today.
That's awesome, John. And it's the fact that you have it for yourself and so like you said, in line with Mark Taylor, it's very promising just to see the longevity and just kind of overall the success that you guys provide to internally. I think that you guys have what it takes to kind of keep moving forward. I think also I'd love to understand this. You did mention the previous owners and just kind of this being a second generational transition period, or just giving you guys the reins. I'd love to kind of get what was it like prior and what you learned from the prior owners, and just kind of what that transition was like for you, and just give us a little insight of as one retires or one transitions into a different period, what that kind of looks like for a business like this.
Yeah. So to clarify, so Jeff, Mark, Scott Taylor, founding principals, they're still owners today.
Okay. See, I'm understanding.
That's fair. Of course, it's down the pathway in terms of their career, and they've afforded me the opportunity. I took over as president in 2016 to really take on second generation leadership.
Yeah.
And I think what's great about Jeff and Scott is, and it's one of our founding principles, is just do the right thing. And they've showed me the pathway to that over time and time again. And I can give you many examples, but the point being is that they would always say, both of them in sync would say, it's not always easy to do the right thing in the moment, but long term, it always works out. Yeah. And that's just so true. And I've seen it time and time again. And I think they've been very patient with me. And I think that's a word I say more and more these days, because as I look at Gen Z and young millennials, everyone's in a rush to be at the top, right? Yeah. New employees here 4 months and how do I become a vice president? Well, it's okay to ask the question, but be patient, accept the journey that's ahead. Life is fun. It's challenging. There's malevolence. There's great times. There's just so many things about life and your journey. Have patience. Yeah. And they were patient with me in terms of helping me really understand what the company meant to them. And it's a very personal journey and story for them. And they're not just going to pass the keys off to anybody. Absolutely. Trust has to be earned. And I think, my conviction for the organization and my love is conveyed to them almost every day. And, I feel a great deal of responsibility in taking this company forward. I want to get to year 40, 50, 60 and beyond. So that's the challenge for me today. But they've been gracious and supportive and tough, of course, challenging. All those things matter. So that's part of the succession plan.
What any kind of lessons learned, or some one thing that they kind of maybe taught you, or just kind of in your daily routine that you've taken away just from them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you have to have a North Star. And, when I think about our employees today, and even going back 5 years ago, we weren't as explicit with principles and mission and vision. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I talk about those things, and I think great leaders know this, you might be ad nauseum by, end of year talking about our 5 principles, but it might be the first time a new employee hears it, right? We have new
Yeah.
employees every Monday.
Yeah.
So, how do you onboard them into the organization and ensure they're connected to what we're trying to accomplish, and also have the right rules of engagement? Because that's what it's about. When
Yeah.
they show up at a community or at the corporate office, they have to understand how we think, how we work, how we operate. And
Yeah.
it's not to be in a silo or echo chamber. The idea is, hey, here's our guiding principles.
Mm-hmm.
And what I also tell them is, I incorporate them into my personal life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go through the list of them. So it's be transparent, which is sometimes difficult. Be better than yesterday, which is my personal mantra. Do the right thing, choose the right attitude, and take extreme ownership. So I always challenge, again, new employees and existing employees, like, use those 5, at least use one in your personal life,
Yeah.
because I want them and their journey. They are family now. So I tell them, I think about them 24/7, which might sound weird from a president to a brand new employee, but it's true. And if at the foundation level of their life, at the core of their personal life, if it's better,
Mm-hmm.
right? If their relationships are better because they're using these founding principles, relationships, loved ones, friends, coworkers, that means their career will be more successful. I just know that because you have that grounded effect.
Yeah.
So that's how I think about the organization, myself. Using them personally for me has been extremely helpful with relationships with my wife, my stepdaughter Lillian.
Mm-hmm.
She uses the choose the attitude on me. If I'm grumpy on Saturday morning, she's like, "Hey, John, you should think about choosing the right attitude today." I'm like, "You're absolutely right."
Get you every time. Oh
Gets
my
me.
goodness. Let me ask you this though, because as we try and understand a little bit more of Mark Taylor and the culture, can you give us a little bit of just kind of how you guys even go about the day-to-day kind of routines, and just kind of like, is there something that you can give us insight as far as behind the scenes of, like, you guys have meetings Monday through whatever, and then you personally, where do you go right after that meeting? What is it like for you on a day-to-day Monday?
So, I think you have to go up to, we are hyper focused on, because there's lots of noise.
Yeah.
Right. So as an organization, it's easy to get distracted. We want to go down this pathway and do this and think about this. Everyone's got great ideas. And when you're blessed with an organization that has a strong culture, there's a lot of, I'll say, willingness and openness to say, "Oh, I want to charge down this hill and make this happen."
Yeah.
For us, it's people, excellence, and growth. Those are the pillars of our strategic initiatives. Of course, we have layers below that, but that's where it starts. So everyone knows daily that it starts with people. So if we invest in our people, support, train, empower, great things happen. So from a week to week journey, we're a service business. So we're open essentially every day. We're now closed on Sundays at the site levels, but we have to consistently take responsibility 24/7 for our residents. We have 35,000 residents that call Mark Taylor home.
Yeah.
And the purpose of that is to ensure that we are taking care of them at a 5-star level. So for us, if we're going to do that, you look at Google reviews and what people say about us and all of those things, you can't get to that 5-star level unless you have a 5-star employee experience.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to invest in our employees so that they're happy, they're engaged, they love what they do, they love where they work, they love supporting these folks.
Yeah.
That will translate into those residents and those 5-star reviews. I guess on a day-to-day from a corporate level, we have monthly director meetings. So that's, real, leadership quality type experiences. So we're going through, tracks of certain things we're trying to accomplish within each department. We might be focused on a resident event or a corporate event or a strategy like ION, which we're rolling out now, or Integrated Operations Network. I think
that's internal, like a internal system. Am I correct?
so. I mean, I would say today, and if you listen to various CEOs, everyone's a technology company today, whether you know it or not. So
Yeah.
Ion is something that was, I go back to the pandemic. So I think this is an important topic because the world got a bit crazy in 2020, as we all know.
Just a little bit.
So in March of 2020, this is an interesting story. So Governor Ducey essentially locked down the state, like many other governors, and we were forced to operate with our leasing offices locked, which we were not accustomed to. Meaning, if you went back to 2019 and you told an owner, "Hey, we're going to lock the door Monday through Sunday, and we're going to continue business with the door locked," they would pull their hair out. Like, what are you
doing?
What are you talking about? So we locked the doors in April of 2020, and we kept working, and we were doing virtual tours and trying to do normalized leasing. We weren't even doing appointments at the time. It was just over the phone, online leasing, and virtual tours.
Yeah.
So we got to May and we rolled up the data. I remember this vividly. We were in an executive meeting on a Monday. It's the first week of May 2020. And we look at the data and we had leased twice as many of apartments as we normally otherwise would have in April with the doors locked.
Wow.
And it was just like, oh my, what just happened? Right.
Yeah.
And I looked at the room and I just said, guys, the apartment leasing or business model of yesterday is dead.
Yeah.
It's no longer, like, it's over.
Yeah.
So, it was upon us to figure out what that meant long term. So we immediately went through the process. Okay, let's figure out what we're doing, what we've always done, right, at the site level. If we collect a check, or if we do a 5-day notice, or whatever it is at the site level, could we do it somewhere else? Could we centralize it? Could we pull it off of the backs of our support staffs on site? And could we do it better and more efficiently? And that was the beginning of what now is called Ion. So
that's awesome.
Really, Ion is centralized leasing and services. So we're supporting it through specialization. So I'll use this as an example. An assistant manager at a community, and many of the folks listening have lived in an apartment community or have dealt with paying rent or getting notices, all of those things. Well, we've asked our assistant managers in the past, and still do in some ways, to be an expert at leasing, be an expert at bookkeeping, at month end, at management, right? They're also a manager at the legal process, because they might have to do a 5-day notice, or someone has a noise complaint, so they have to do a 48, all of these things. It's so difficult to do all of those things at a high level. So the idea being, let's remove the things away from an assistant manager that aren't necessary for that position, and give them to experts that want to do that. And it's also about that, just in that purpose of saying to an employee, hey, if you want to be forward facing and tour and do appointments at the site level and interact with possible or prospective residents, you do that. If you want to be in the back end and just do bookkeeping, right? You're more of an introvert, you want to do accounting, you're great at numbers, you can do that. So creating more pathways for success for all of our employees. So Ion has been released. We're doing that now just for ourselves internally. We're now launching our third pod. It's just communities together, supported by the structure above and below. So I'm really excited about that. I think, my director of communications will always say, we have to innovate today to be successful tomorrow. And that's what we're doing right now.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I'm taking away from our conversation is, this one critical aspect of looking inward during the pandemic, and just finding the silver lining and finding those critical needs that our customers, our people who are fans of our business, what they look at us to fulfill, and those strategic and critical points, us fulfilling as the business or as the entrepreneur, filling those needs and those gaps as much as we can to help success and help us provide what we essentially, I call the bread and butter of our business to the client or to the customer. Because I think one of the best things about the pandemic is that it gave us an opportunity to look inward and ask ourselves, the business owner, those questions. Give us time to really slow down, reflect. There's a lot of noise, but there is opportunity here. There's a chance to man the ship and steer it the right direction. So kudos to you guys for looking and taking the leap. I mean, I know it's not easy to, essentially we're looking at an app here, from top to bottom, technology wise, or something critical that is an intro intranet for your business. So I say kudos to you guys, because it is something that you're taking mass quantities of data, however you want to put it, and putting it into the hands of your customer, not customers, to your to the people you work with, and to your to those who need it most and who want it in that specific form. Like if they are the introverts and want to be the back end, they can be, and providing them that opportunity to grow within the needs of what they feel like they're successful at.
Yeah, I think the other piece of that is listening to our resident base, right? Because they told us during the pandemic they don't always want to have a leasing consultant holding their hand walking through a community in a unit, right? Sometimes self-service matters, and it's clear that self-service elevated itself to the next level during the pandemic. Of course, some of that was forced, but I think there goes my light. I think some of that was not only expected from the millennials and Gen Zers, but the Gen Xers and Yers adapted. I mean, QR codes came back. Who thought that would happen, right?
Exactly.
And here they are.
It looked like they were on like 1 foot into the grave, and we're just going to move right past it in those days before the pandemic. I'm like, they're not even helpful anymore. We're not even there anymore. And so as soon as like the pandemic hit, and I'm like, oh, thank God we didn't get rid of it, because like the online menus, like just having an online portable menu, just like that saved a lot of restaurants.
Absolutely.
So again, I think that having this opportunity to take the time to, again, provide yourself with something that is a good foundational tool for all of the, not only the clients, but your, just everyone in general. I think that's really wonderful. I could ask you now more as a kind of moving and looking towards your guys' future as Mark Taylor. Can you give us a little bit of what you're excited about currently or project wise that you guys are trying to really push forward this month or this quarter? And can you give us a little bit of insight as far as the market, as you guys are starting to collect the data from Ion? I know that you said that there is a definite change in just kind of how we approach this business, but do you see anything else coming from the data that you guys collect behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's important to know that we really also see ourselves as a data company. We've been collecting data since 1985, and we really function and make proactive operational and business decisions based on that data. Yeah. Arizona is very cyclical, specifically Phoenix Metro, in terms of the environment of multifamily. So you just think about if you go through the journey January through December, and you think about how the state functions. January, I'll just start with January. There's a lot of layoffs. So it's, our job is our business is very correlated to jobs. So January, we have a ton of layoffs from the seasonal holiday hires. Everyone gets laid off in January and February. So you essentially lose all of your jobs January through July each year in Arizona, and gain all of your jobs August through December. So you think about the why behind that. I mentioned January, move into the spring. Schools stop, spring break, and schools are out. The weather changes, so tourism goes away. Summer's quiet, and then you ramp back up. It's getting a little bit earlier, so late July and August, but you have tourism coming back, schools reopening, snowbirds coming back, weather, seasonal, all of those things. So it ramps back up. August creates about 65% of all of our jobs in Arizona every year, which people don't realize. So
I did not know that, actually.
We have to think about what that means for our business. So because that is the case, we know in May and June, based on our data, it's the highest trafficked month. So the most people are looking for apartments during that time frame. So if you miss that window, it makes it more difficult from an operational perspective. So when you think about the market today, as you mentioned, we had the best, I'll say, operational year on record in 2021 from an apartment operator perspective, better than 19, better than 18, and better than 2005.
Nice.
So the question was always with investors and folks saying, okay, these rent levels, it was all over, it was the news of the day. Rent levels up 25, 30%. Well, the reason that was the case is it's always a supply and demand perspective, right? So, people will jump to say we need rent control or we need all of these governors. Well, we need supply to reduce rates. And it's proving itself out again, like it does every cycle going back to the 80s. Well, we were undersupplied in multifamily from 2011 through 2021.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of factors contributing to that. There was I'll say a negative or black cloud around Phoenix in 2009, 10, 11 post GFC for the rightful reasons.
Yeah.
We were not a very diverse economy. We were heavily reliant upon construction, single family housing, all of those things.
Yeah.
So today, I know this to be factual. If you look at the sector growth from 2010 through today, and I say 2010 because we troughed in jobs, but we're much more diversified. So if you look at the top 5 growth sectors, it's bioscience, it's health and services, it's business. Manufacturing isn't even in the top 5 in that 10-year growth, but manufacturing will carry us forward for the next 5 to 10 years because of the investments of TSMC, Intel, suppliers behind them, LG. So, the wave of that tailwind is not even here yet, but it's coming. So that's exciting for this economy.
Yeah.
But the concern was always being undersupplied. So this gets a little bit more complicated, but currently we're cresting in supply. Okay. So we delivered 13,883 units in multifamily last year. We'll deliver about 15,000 this year.
Okay.
So we're delivering, just say around numbers, 30,000 in 2 years.
Yeah.
We averaged under 9,000 prior to that, 2011 through 20. So it's almost a doubling of supply. So what happens to rents? Rents are now below CPI. It's 1 to 2% rent growth, which is great for a prospect. If they're saying, "Oh, my lease renewal is coming up. I love where I live. I love the services. I love the people. I pay 1 to 2% more," and some are negative. So some are negative 1 to 2%. Just depends on the community.
Yep.
So supply solves the pricing issue every time. And the concern I have longer term, and I think we have to think about this as housing leaders. And one thing I participate in is our Arizona Multi-Housing Association and Arizona Housing for All, which is a subsidiary of that. And it's really focused on educating and advocating for housing because longer term, we have a housing supply shortage.
Yep.
And that ties to single family for sale, right? Because it's the housing supply collectively.
Yeah.
So if you look at 26 and beyond, we're going to cause issues for new job growth, which affects us in terms of multifamily because there's a lack of housing. So already today, if you listen to, Greater Phoenix Economic Council and Chris Camacho and Sandra Watson, there's already suppliers behind TSMC, 40, 50 suppliers saying, "I'm not sure there's enough housing for my employees."
Wow.
So the last thing you want to do in a very competitive environment for new business is say, okay, if a company's coming from California, because no one wants to stay in California, clearly, if they want to go to Utah, Texas, Arizona, housing affordability matters. It's part of the reason TSMC chose Phoenix. There's many of those things, but that's part of the reason people select Phoenix Metro because there is or has been ample supply. That might not be the case tomorrow. So we have to make sure that there's enough housing to support that future job growth.
So a little bit of insight into my world and just who I am outside of this podcast. I'm a landscape architect, just to be totally upfront with everyone. And I left a business called Collective Landscape Architect a couple of years back that actually worked on a couple of Mark Taylor's projects. So I know a little bit about the architecture and the landscape architecture. I find it very to me, just my background is just like seeing and understanding the level of development and just the growth and the increase just because, one, I want to, and I'm fascinated by it. And generally it comes from a level of passion as someone who's a local here, and just seeing the diversity and the growth is wonderful. But as also someone who is very much a advocate for sustainability and just understanding water and protection of water, I just again I'm always so fearful of this increase of mass population and where we go with some of our sustainable aspects such as water, solar power, energy, where that comes from, and these kind of pulling dynamics of because we're fighting Colorado, because we're fighting California and Nevada for the Colorado River, we're growing on a mass index of just increased really badly. And the long-term view is will there be enough water to support all of this growing city? I don't know. I'm not an expert, but again, it's like, as someone who's, not a middleman in a sort of way, but as someone who has their finger on the pulse and understanding this one aspect, along with there's also different dynamics to it, and having to worry about city governance and all of that. Is that something that worries, or is that something that keeps you up at night, long term, as far as how you go about the business aspect?
Well, there's a couple things. So I would say from a water perspective, because that is certainly the topic of today and will be tomorrow. It's been great to see how wet the season's been. Right, you look at Roosevelt Lake. I mean, we're back. Bartlett, they're back to 95%. We have to take care of Powell and Lake Mead, of course. But I think people have to understand the data behind water and all of those things. So they have to know. And I think when you sit in front of a neighborhood meeting with the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard folks, water is the new topic. It's always crime, traffic, and water. Water is the new one. When you create more density, you use less water, right? So if you create a 5-story wrap building or podium, and you have minimal landscaping, which I love, but you're creating a density that allows for us to use less water. If you had to support those 500 people in 500 separate individual homes, you would use more water. So density matters in terms of water conservation. I think it's also important to know that we have 13 million acre X, meaning we have about 5 years of supply in the aquifers, which is important. And we use less water today in Phoenix Metro than we did in 1970 because we're pulling away from the agriculture play. But I think we have to really think about long-term, how do we maintain the amount of water we have? We can't rely on the Colorado River forever, right? We just hit that threshold where we reduced 22%. The good news is that, the watershed and the water going into the aquifers, we haven't used all of that allotment from the Colorado River ever, right? The excess goes in. So I think the question is, how do we solve long-term? Ducey put a great plan together last year, and his last year as governor, $2 billion allocated towards that plan. When you look at Israel, 95% of their water is desalination from the ocean. So we're not that far away. How do we solve for that? So I think technology will help us figure that out. Nevada, and specifically Las Vegas, about 90% of their water is recycled. So
that's something I knew.
I think there's things that we can do collectively to really support that. So I love that it's a topic. I love that it's being debated. I love that, we're putting a lot of attention on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's again, it's just one of those things of like, topic wise, you're someone who's like, effectively you could help in a sense of like, you have an ability to, in all of what you guys put out, you have the ability to affect that range. But in the sense, you also have the ability to understand the bigger market and just understand overall effectiveness and sustainable approaches to building into the things that you guys put out as far as your own services. That's all I'm just trying to say. Everyone has that opportunity in their own business. So thank you again, John, for allowing me to just pick your brain here for a little bit. I know that I personally think that you guys have something really beautiful. I've been to a couple of the properties. Again, I find it very, I like when someone takes care or wants to take care of, and wants to go about it, like you said, the right way. Do it the right way, and you won't have to worry about it long term. So
absolutely.
That being said, I learned a lot today. I usually kick it off this end portion for you to go ahead and let everyone know where they can find you through social media, online, everything, address, phone number, anything in between. This is your chance to promote. So go ahead, John.
Thank you, Jose. So I think the best way to learn more about us is just mark-taylor.com. You'll see our entire portfolio of communities, which I think is fascinating to me, from high rise to garden style. Everything that we build. You get to know a little bit about us if you go there. I'm actively on LinkedIn. I think that's a great platform for us today to really talk about not just Mark Taylor, but what we're doing in terms of the community, how we're supporting the growth of Arizona and multifamily. And that's really it. We're local. We're going to be here, like I said, in perpetuity. So we want to be in business and part of this great community for a long time. I love Arizona. We love Arizona. We're based in Scottsdale and have our fingerprints all over the Phoenix metro, and look forward to many, many successful years ahead.
Awesome. Do you want to give a shout out to your vice president? Because I know you guys do a lot of things together. Because I saw the picture of you guys together. I was like, I'm so like not mad, but I'm like disappointed a little disappointed I didn't get a chance to meet him. But I'll take John nonetheless. Go ahead and shout him out.
Yeah. So Michael Wilson, vice president of operations asset management. So quick story. So when I told you the San Cervantes stories, what I didn't tell you is that I lived in I moved into 1007. It was the second building open. My neighbor was Michael Wilson in 1008. We shared walls together.
Nice.
He had moved from Arkansas just a few months before me, just a couple months actually. And he was in finance, had a financial background, financial advisor, and a degree from Arkansas, and was also in between jobs. Nice. So I got to know him while we were unemployed, enjoying the fruits of San Cervantes pool. And his roommate had worked for Mark Taylor at the time.
Wow.
So he was in leasing. So 20 plus years later, very close, dear friend of mine, obviously a big piece of the success here at Mark Taylor. Yeah. I think his continued determination, perseverance, the guy he just blazes ahead, and no better operator in multifamily than him.
Awesome. Thank you again. I just wanted to ask that just because, again, you guys have a wonderful relationship. So before we go, ladies and gentlemen, my last bit here is you can hear every episode of our podcast at findingarizonapodcast.com. We make it easy for you guys to connect with us. Finding Arizona under all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Tell us who you want in next, and we'll try and make that happen. Last but not least, we always say at the end of every episode, kisses, hugs, and belly rubs. We will see you next time.
Thank you, Jose.
And no problem. And that's the end of that episode. I appreciate you